The Grey Hat Beard Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Grey Hat Beard Princess, the modern workplace podcast where we talk about all things Microsoft 365. I'm the Grey of Grey Hat Beard. My name's Kevin McDonald. I'm the Head of Practice for Modern Workplace at CPS and an Office Apps and Services MVP. Now, those watching on video or even listening may be able to hear birds in the background and may notice things are a bit different. And this is a slightly different episode because it's just going to be me. And I'm interviewing another MVP. I was at a recent offsite with CPS and Pete Rising. I think he's Office Apps and Services MVP, does a lot in security and compliance. We decided to go for a walk at lunchtime and have a chat about what we're feeling about what was happening in the community and other things, and record it. And we quite liked it, so I've agreed with others that we're going to publish this. Let us know what you think. Does it work? Doesn't it work? And well, enjoy. There we go. I think we're recording.
It looks like we are, yeah.
So this is Kevin McDonald and
I'm Peter Rising.
And we are at an offsite, and we thought it'd be quite nice to record some thoughts and go for a wander. So
let's do it.
Should we walk on? We're not quite sure where we're going.
Let's walk and talk and try and remain in shot
and see
as best we can.
So yeah, the kind of purpose of the offsite is a bit of get together and kind of share some thoughts on where things are going. Even till we're not quite sure where we're walking and things like that, and
meet in person in some cases as well.
Yes.
I mean, for you and I, it's the
first time we've actually met properly in person, which is quite exciting.
Which is
as well.
very, very nice, yeah. But it's a lovely location we're at, isn't it? We're
absolutely, yeah. Hopefully you can see behind us a lovely bit of woodland, lovely chance to get together. And it's interesting. I've been sort of chatting with Veronique Lengel, another MVP. She's been remote on this, and I kind of find it fascinating. There's been so much chat about hybrid work, and we haven't heard much from the remote people and stuff like that. I think they found it quite hard to listen in, and I worry slightly that we're going back to not being hybrids, but just going back to in-person or remote and not having that hybrid. And I kind of be interested. I don't know what your thoughts are on stuff like that.
I agree with what you're saying, because as somebody who's attending this in person, it's been very easy to forget that there are remote attendees. And it's been challenging to include them, and that's a worry for me. I mean, anyone who knows me quite well is that I'm more of a remote first and in-person second stance. It's very rare to find me at an in-person event. It's the first time I've been anywhere in a couple of years, and I've really enjoyed it, but I do worry that we're going to go back to an in-person first stance, shall we say.
Yeah, or remote only. And
or remote only, yeah.
How do we kind of encourage that hybrid? How do people understand that? And I think that this is the thing. I think hybrid, people think sort of 50-50, it's kind of half remote, half people in the room. But actually what happens, you tend to have a kind of a balance. So like today, we've had most people are there in the room, and a few remotes, or even you have more remote and maybe a couple of people together. So I had a meeting last night with a client, and there was two of us in the room, and then everyone else was in different places. And it's kind of, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that actually goes and how
it is
to stop people falling back into the same old ways. And for me, I look at this, I worked in financial services, and I remember 2008 and how the financial system, everything was going to change. It was going to be a brand new world. Everything was going to be different. 2 or 3 years later, actually,
no, has
it was the same.
Really changed?
Nothing's changed. The banks are still doing the same bank stuff. And
I think I was chatting to a colleague yesterday along similar lines, and I think it is very, very industry specific in many ways. People like military, like the army and navy and those sort of folks. I think I did some work for an organisation last year who were ex-military, and they set up their own organisation, and they were very much of that mindset of in person, we want you here. And there are other organisations, other customers that I've dealt with who are the opposite now. They've seen how it can work remotely, how they can save costs on travel and accommodation for consultants and paying for all that, and not having to look after consultants on site as well, and feed them and entertain them and find somewhere for them to sit and work.
Yeah,
So there's lots of considerations, isn't there? And it's going to there's no one size fits all.
No, and I think it's, I don't know, I find it slightly depressing, and I hope things are going to go to hybrid, because I think it's the right way of working, but it kind of, there's a lot of investment in those big buildings, in those offices and stuff like that people aren't going to move away from. And I know, talking to a few other friends, they're being sort of forced to go back to the office,
and that worries me a lot.
The thing that worries me is that forced.
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
You need that choice and opportunity.
You do, definitely, because you've got to bring the people factor into it as well. Not everybody is the same. There are people who can't wait to get back into the office, where there are others who maybe are a bit more anxious and more introverted, shall we say, and don't have any problem with working from home, and COVID restrictions was easier on them in some regards from that point of view. But now they've got the concern of, am I going to be forced to go back into the office? And it is something that I think I hope we do learn from it, and we find that middle ground, and hopefully the technology will continue to improve to support that as well. That's key to it, isn't it?
I don't know. I think technology there. So it's been interesting. In the Offsite, we're using something called Slido, sli.do, and funnily enough, I went to see Grayson Perry, the artist, at Royal Albert Hall last week, and he was using Slido as well. So he was taking kind of live polls from the audience and getting people to vote, and kind of saying, it's interesting from the previous audiences, they talked about this, from previous audiences we talked about this, and I think we've used it twice, maybe 3 times during this offsite, and so I think the tools are there. It's building in, getting people used to that, getting people familiar, and kind of, and also accepting that people can have their devices, because I know we had that conversation at the start, is turn off your laptops.
Yes.
Now, I listened to that. I was like, well, actually, I'm making notes. For me to remember to take things in, I like to make notes. I like to come back to it and look at it afterwards. And to be honest, even if I don't come back to it, the act of writing it helps me remember things as much on there. So I was like, yes, I'm a little bit naughty. I listened to them saying don't have laptops. I was like, well, it's a tablet. That's not a laptop. That's fine. And so ignored them completely as well. But I think it's that kind of, turn off, don't be distracted, which you kind of need a little bit, but is that the hybrid world? And actually what Mike's was saying with the hybrid is you should have those devices, you should be able to have that side chat. And I found it fascinating earlier today that people are having that kind of one-to-one conversation with whoever's next to them, and a little whispering and here there, whereas actually if you had that side chat in a hybrid meeting, the whole audience can get involved and can hear that. Whereas now it's that one-to-one or one to a couple of people. That's disappeared a little bit, and the chat that is there, and for those poor remote people are missing out on that. Definitely isn't happening so much, and it's intriguing.
No, absolutely. And to the point, back to Slido, it was a little bit confusing for many people in the audience, in that somebody actually said at the end of a session, when do we start using this?
Yes.
And we should have been using it throughout.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to learn about these sort of hybrid functions, isn't there, and how we're going to include people effectively and use these tools and technologies.
It's the adoption and change, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
At CPS we talk about it a lot. It's such an important thing, but it is the reality. It's trying to. We've talked on Grey Hat Beard Princess before about habits and how do you. There's a great book, Atomic Habits. How do you build those habits of doing the right thing into it as well? And it's intriguing. So, security and compliance side of things. How do you think things will change much with that? That in the same way we talked about teams and going to hybrid meetings, people come back to doing the same old ways. Do you think that there will be a bigger change and people get more used to kind of having endpoints and having their own devices will become the norm, and it won't come back to let's be in the office, let's set up the VPNs and that's the only way you'll access. Do you think that will change at all?
I think we're already on that journey to a large degree. I think whether organizations want to support that BYOD scenario or not, it's hard not to it's hard to prevent that entirely. It's going to happen unless you completely log everything down, which...
But do you think people will go back to that and sort of going to the, right, no, you have to be in the office, IP address based, or do you think they've kind of embraced this new remote world? And
I'd like to think for the most part that they've embraced the new remote world for a number of reasons. I mean, A, convenience, and B, for environmental concerns. I think...
And that's it. Yes, and I hope that's more of a conversation.
I do hope so.
That comes up, because it's... I don't think it's been talked about enough. Really.
I agree.
I think Microsoft talks about sustainability and talk about the environmental, but they haven't talked about it so much as this is why you should be remote. This is why you reduce the travelling and blah blah blah. And
exactly. And in COVID, I think it was proven that climate change, it did have a positive impact on it in many respects, didn't it? Reduced air travel, reduced emissions from cars, and so on and so forth.
Yes, and again, it'll be interesting because I know sort of at the certainly in the UK, the very early stage of the lockdown, absolutely, and the pollution levels dropped and things like that. It was, I find it fascinating. I was a bit naughty, did drive over here, but picked up a few people on the way, so kind of did that lift sharing and stuff like that.
Excellent.
But I stopped at a service station, and I'm a little bit weird. I love service stations. I
like them too.
Love that kind of focus. But it was really interesting. A number of people in suits, a number of people in shirts. It was. It's kind of felt when I've been to service stations over the last couple of years, it's been people on holidays, people travelling because of that. But suddenly it was interesting. Those consultants, a lot of people look like sales, look like people who are road warriors out on there, seem to be back.
Yeah,
which was intriguing.
I know. I've noticed the same, and that over the past couple of years, I've not really been out very much. I've not been further than really school runs and round to my in-laws, and this is my first real outing in a good couple of years, and I've been quite surprised being out and about and again how back to normal things are. As somebody who's not been out into the world so much, there's not really any mask wearing anymore to any degree. There's not really any social distancing. People have been coming up to me and shaking hands, and and I've been doing it, and I've been discreetly sort of using this afterwards.
And funny you mentioned shaking hands. I've been shaking from hands, and I think this is probably the first time I haven't thought about it. So I've been to a couple of in-person conferences, and everyone's been slightly nervous, whereas
everyone's just doing it now.
I think they're already just doing it.
And it's nice to have that normality. It's comforting, it's reassuring, but but not everybody feels the same way about it. I've been sort of trying to discreetly sort of whenever I do something like that. But for the we're going to get knocked over by a lorry in a moment. But stand aside.
Run this way over there.
Yeah, is he going? No, he's going that way.
Oh, he's going that way.
There we go. But
that's intriguing. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's comforting. People want to go into what is familiar and things like that. And I think from a consultancy point of view, we should be breaking that as much as possible. We should be encouraging people to think about new ways of doing things.
Definitely.
And not just resort to doing the same thing, because it is comforting. And I think... And I think things like having clean hands, I'd love that. There was a lot of notion during the first lockdown of we'll never go back to shaking hands. We should break that, because it's not good. You're spreading germs and things like that. And I live in Singapore, and across Asia as well, there's people, if they have a cold, will wear a mask. That is just the accepted norm. And I thought that people go back to that, but I don't think it is. I think it's kind of
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, the mask has disappeared. It's funny enough. I haven't got mine in my pocket for a long time, but I always had one in my pocket.
Always had one, yeah.
It's now in my bag.
I've got some in my luggage, yeah. I've not worn one this whole trip.
Yeah.
I did wonder, would I wear one on the train journey down, but nobody else was, so there's that sort of, I don't want to be the only mask in the room sort of thing.
It's interesting, isn't it?
So it is interesting. There's lots of things to think about as we go back into normality.
But I think it applies to technology. It applies to how we drive change within organisations. How do we get those habits, and how do we break those habits and make them consistent? We talked on Grey Hat Beard Princess before about good ideas and things we do that you can do, you do, and you stop, and it just goes thump. And I was thinking actually about Viva Insights and the virtual commute. That fantastic thing at the end of each day, wrapping up, looking at what your tasks you've done, looking at what you've got tomorrow. And I had a look and realised that I hadn't done it for about 2 months.
Yes.
And I'd just broken that habit. And it kind of got me thinking about speaking to Microsoft. How do you kind of reinvigorate things like this? How do you kind of get that early? You do it for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. When things break, how do you bring those things back? Whereas actually the emails do follow those emails quite consistently as well, and sort of look at those. Whereas going into Viva Insights, yes, I still get the alert every day. Yeah. I know I just kind of go, marker's read, done.
I'm exactly the same. I mean, when I started CPS 6 or so months ago now, I religiously did the Viva Insights, virtual commute, all of that stuff. I adopted that into my day-to-day activities, and like you, I've sort of fallen by the wayside on it now, and I'm not doing it so much now. And it was a good habit to be in. It was doing the breathing exercises for the well-being was something that was really quite good as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think where I particularly fell off is when they changed that from the kind of 2-minute breathing exercise to the 10-minute meditation. That for me was too long. I didn't feel I did it, and that is probably one of the big stoppers as to when I change with that. So
I think what this is all illustrating though is that we're on a journey with this, aren't we? It's still very, very early days. This is a new form of digital transformation that has organically come about by necessity of a pandemic and the changing world that we're living in. And I think we're really in the infancy of this. We've come a long way. The technology that we've got now is amazing compared to where we've come from, but I think we're really still scratching the surface. There's more to come, and whenever you have a big Microsoft event like Ignite or Inspire or Build coming up, that sort of thing, it's always quite exciting to see what they've got coming next in terms of that sort of innovation.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, the two things I think from that. One that I was thinking before is, why do we stop with habits? Is it because things are not good? And to me, I think Viva Insights, I think doing that virtual commute is a good thing. We should continue doing. Why do I not do it? Why is it? Are we lazy? Is it kind of hard to do and things like that? How do you?
It's not hard to do, but for me, I think if I'm thinking why I stopped doing it, I'm thinking, well, this is the last thing I'm going to do in my day. Do I really want to do this, even though it's going to take a few minutes, or do I just want to switch my laptop off, go into the house,
go for a walk,
see my family, have my tea, something to eat, so it's kind of like, it is the lazy option, isn't it? So how do we get back into that habit of doing something that actually is going to be good for our well-being, good for our productivity, because it's going to set us up well for the next day. We're not going to be going in the next morning worrying about what's in our diary, because we've already had a look on that virtual commute in theory of tomorrow you've got this and that, and these are the documents that might be relevant for that, and so on and so forth. So
and then you were talking about the conferences and coming back to that, because to me there's new things that come out from that, but there's also the reminders of things you should do. So maybe a new thing comes out with Viva Insights and might go, ooh, yes, I should do that. Or even antivirus, security and things like that. There's a new bit of functionality that reminds me that I should be doing that. And the kind of, I've been looking a lot at OKRs recently, to Teams Nation, and I think there's a lot to be said about focusing on one thing and doing that. So having a backlog of stuff you're interested in, stuff you should do, habits you should pick up on, but then sort of saying, not doing this right now, not doing that right now, we'll pick up on these later. And those sort of conferences and even training courses as well. It's the kind of, yes, I should be doing this. I know this. I'm not learning anything new from this training course. I'm kind of reminding myself about stuff I should do as well. And I think, whether it's technical training or even more the soft skills, leadership, productivity and things like that, it's that kind of nudge that you need. And I know there's the government's had that kind of nudge department, and it's that kind of, how do you go from it being a habit, how do you nudge people back into the good ways of working and stuff like that? And I think it applies to everything with the technology stacks and things like that. So
I agree. It's that merging the people with the technology and getting the best possible result from that is unlocking the secret of that is the key, isn't it? And interesting times though, for sure. It's what a couple of years we've been through though, what innovation we've seen by necessity over that period of time. It's interesting to me that if we'd not been through these times, what would have happened? How would we have evolved technology-wise, and from a human aspect as well? We'll never know. It's a sliding doors parallel universe thing, isn't it? But
absolutely. That's an truth. Yeah, multiverse of madness. There's a multiverse somewhere where there's been no coronavirus, and we're probably still talking about even Viva. Probably, I wonder, would Viva have existed if it hadn't been for the lockdown, or certainly would it have had the adoption it has if it wasn't for that? Things like the virtual commute would not have happened. And if we look at Viva Insights, the workplace analytics has been kind of bubbling along, but just didn't have that kind of adoption, that kind of that brand, that understanding. And I think with the lockdown, everyone's like, right, we need that remote, we need to understand what people are doing and things like that. So it's be intriguing. So we're going to walk on a little bit more. So we're here in the Offsite, it's our new financial year. What's exciting you about the year ahead, either technology or things you think you're going to do?
Well, obviously the exciting challenges that Microsoft provide me in SC&I, security, compliance and identity, is things like renaming products, and new product launches. So we've, from a new product point of view, or an add-on to Microsoft Compliance, we've got Microsoft Priva, which is privacy risk management and subject rights requests. So we've got that, which we're introducing into the suite of products. But from an overall point of view, from Microsoft Compliance as a whole, talking about things like data loss prevention and information governance and protection, everything has now been branded under a new umbrella term called Purview, Purview. You
had to think about that.
Had to think about that.
Didn't you? Yeah.
And interesting name choice. I'm not sure if anyone's really said they really like the name just yet, but it's there. It's here to stay. And I do like the idea of it being a cohesive sort of bringing everything together.
Yes.
It's going to be easier for customers to understand that journey.
It's having that. This is it. I don't like the name. I'm not going to lie, and it's been interesting to speaking to other people in the company that ridiculous name and things like that. And I think there's.
But the name doesn't matter really at the end of the day, does it? But
having one thing, I absolutely agree with that. So you're not talking about Microsoft 365 security and compliance. You're not talking about Azure security and compliance. You're talking about one thing, and I think that I like. That is
definitely
important.
we need to get things easier to understand. And I think that's probably come from Viva in a way.
Well, there's a lot of different things, but it's got that one brand.
It's cohesive.
Suddenly people understand it a lot more.
Yeah, I think Microsoft have taken note of that and thought we can use this across other technology principles within our offerings, and I think that's going to drive adoption of these technologies and understanding of those technologies amongst our customers and the community a lot more, for sure. So we'll, from a CPS point of view, we're going to be doing a CNI Roadshow in June at Microsoft locations up and down the country, London, Manchester and Edinburgh. We've got that planned. So watch out for those on social soon.
Yeah, no, do come and say hello, real people. Look.
Absolutely, come and see us in person. But
you can see Peter's lovely locks in real life, which I've had a couple of people already mention. It's like, Pete's hair really is amazing. I've kind of seen it on video, but actually in real life it's even more incredible. And I completely agree.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, it's funny because since having long hair, I've not really been any places, so I'm getting used to two things. Before the pandemic, I didn't wear glasses and I had short hair.
Oh, really?
So being out and about so much with your hair blows all over the place and tie it back occasionally, and the glasses, I'm quite sort of warm-blooded by nature, and I'm finding that I'm steaming up quite a lot when I get hot. So it's new things to get used to that are challenges I didn't have before.
Yeah. Nice. I've had glasses for a few years and I've got used to it, but that's
I only need them for reading and for the computer, but I decided when I got them that I would get varifocals because I couldn't be bothered taking them on and off and on and off. So
you look down your nose at people and kind
yes, exactly. Walking downstairs took some getting used to when I first started wearing these, but it's habit now.
And again, we're coming back to habits and things like that, and so go into my thoughts. What are going to be big this year? I think Viva will continue to grow. I think it's now it's now not something new. It's something we should build into the habits. We should have everyone doing and stuff like that. What am I really excited with in Viva? It's Ally and the OKRs.
And OKR stands for?
So OKRs are objective key results. I'll try and put a link to wherever we publish this. On that, about talk I did at Teams Nation about Ally and what OKRs are. Oh, there's a noisy thing there. And hopefully we can hear that. But to me, what I love about that, and it's been really good hearing on the Offsite, is when you work somewhere, you should know what the purpose of what you do. When you start on a Monday, how do you know what you do makes a difference to the company? And how are you not just doing things for the sake of it? And to me, OKRs are all about that. And it's been really good seeing at the Offsite, having that company vision, bringing people together and saying, this is why we're doing what we're doing, this is how you play into that. And I think OKRs take that from a one-off event to, on a day-to-day basis, here are my explicit measures. Here is why I'm doing, how can I improve that? And here is an absolute number. Here's a kind of task I need to do to tick off, but also a number of things. So I've also recently started, Leslie Crook has been fantastic at starting the Viva Explorers. So we're a group of MVPs to talk about Viva, to help understand the why you need employee experience, why you need this as a tool, what is Viva, understanding that, and how you can actually implement that as well. But we had the kind of meetup last week, and we said one of my key things was we need OKRs. We need to say, what does success look like from that group? And there was things like measures. So we kind of talked about it's getting out to people to understand. So how many events do we attend? How many blogs do we write? How many videos do we get together? And getting that explicit measure. We can say, we can put a YouTube channel up there. We'll create this number of videos. We can say, any of us go and speak an event about Viva, we can tick that. But it's that explicit definition of this is what success looks like to us.
And it's probably going to discourage that age-old problem of siloing again, isn't it? So where an empire building, that sort of thing, when you get people to work together and telling the same story.
Absolutely. And like, so many of us are working at consultancies and we'll have our own objectives, but by having one purely for Viva Explorers, we have a shared investment in that. And it was, I've got to make sure I'm not going to cause trouble, but the MVP summit recently, one of the things, I'm going to say one of the two teams were working together, and their comment was, we have shared OKRs. That was across two different teams. They were coming together, and their definition of coming together was having that shared OKRs. And I loved hearing that, especially from Microsoft, because that's a classic place of having silos and having things broken down from that. It was really nice to hear that, and I think that's something I'd love to see organisations going for. I'd love to see. I think I'm generally a technical person. I love implementing technology, but what I love with the Viva and especially with OKRs is that consulting. It's that how do you do it? It's not technically. You can sort of put it in and how to do it, but how do you have that conversation? How do you work out what OKRs? How do you cascade that to people? Because big organisations, you have those top level ones. How does that cascade to what people do on a day-to-day basis? And how do you work that? How do you not spend a year? Kind of the organisation may define those objectives. How do you get that down to the many layers you can have with big enterprises? It could take a year to get that out to people. How do you make that quicker? And I think that's
I can
that's
definitely
the interesting
see
thing I see happening.
I can see how that's going to add a lot of value into organisations for sure, and solve a lot of collective challenges to bring people together. And I'm already thinking of some of the use cases within where you and I work at CPS, where that's going to help us come together and get some things across the line where we've potentially not been able to come together as effectively. So definitely, and it could potentially even extend into community as well. I mean, there's lots of community initiatives going on as well. I mean, we've got a I don't think it's an exclusive announcement, because I think on the Cloud Conversations podcast most recent episode, Nikki Chappell and Kat Greenan did mention that a few of us in the compliance wider community are going to start authoring an online book about compliance from the end user point of view, not from the admin's point of view.
When you say an online book,
yes,
what it's you're going to work on it, publish it, have it online, or is it going to be you'll kind of see the drafts and people can contribute as it goes along?
So there's about 6 of us in the team in total that we've brought together of compliance folk from the Microsoft community who share this passion for Microsoft 365 compliance and want to tell that story, but tell it in an ongoing, evolving way. So not in a print book.
Sorry, I hope the noise isn't too
yes, I hope not.
too much background noise. We're going to kind of try and wander away from some of the background. But sorry.
But then, I mean, there's a couple of example titles out there in the community already, like the Office 365 for IT pros, the Microsoft 365 security for IT pros. This one's not for IT pros. It's for the personas who have the need to use purview compliance tools within Microsoft 365. So it's your records managers, your information officers, the people who actually need to do the e-discovery searches and set their retention policies and make sure that their organizations are compliant within their internal policies and any industry regulations. So yeah, we're working on identifying the personas that the book is targeted towards, and then the subject matter. We're going to be allocating subjects to the individuals who are contributing, and once we've got the first draft done, we're going to publish it online, self-publish. Yeah. And we are going to update it on a regular basis. How frequently, I'm not sure yet.
So with that, but, I don't want to put you in trouble here, but would that be a free book, or people would be able to buy it? Or
it would be to purchase in the same principle as the Office 365 for IT Pros book and the security one. So there would be a cost.
But when they purchase it, then they'll get ongoing updates.
They'll get the ongoing updates, yes. So there'll be a version 1, a version 2, or whatever. Versioning we apply to it. But it's very early days. We've had one. We got the group together. It took us long enough to get everyone together for the first kickoff meeting, actually, because there's so many people involved. There's some different time zones, but we got some great folks involved. I'm sure they won't mind me naming them right now. So we've got Joanne Klein from Canada. We've got Raphael Koelner from Germany. I hope I've said your surname right, Raphael.
I always find this with the podcast that you've seen these names written down, and so you start speaking them, we're like, I've never said this out loud. So.
We've got Nikki Chappell, who works over at Cloudway over in Norway. A great team of MVPs running that organisation. We've got Graham Hosking, who's over at Lighthouse now, formerly from Microsoft. We've got Ryan Murphy. I think he works somewhere called Epic.
That's right.
He's former Microsoftie as well. Kat Greenan, my very dear friend over from Cloud Conversations and works at Core. And we've got
that's quite a powerhouse of people.
We've got I'm really hoping I've not forgotten anybody. There is one more. There's a lady called Maha, Maha. I can't remember her surname. I do apologise.
We might edit this later.
Yes, we might. But Maha's works with Microsoft. Works at Microsoft, I should say, and she's going to be involved heavily in the editing process for us as well. So,
that's fantastic. I love the idea of that. I find it fascinating with books, because I was doing a clear out recently and have a load of the old technology books and things like that, and I kind of every now and then think that they've gone away slightly. But there is that need to have that kind of central place to go and just you go to videos, you go online on exactly to know what you want, but there's times you want to kind of understand a bit around it. You've got that kind of breadth of things, and I think there's still a good place for books. And
I think so too. I think so too. As somebody who's authored a couple of books now, I've enjoyed the experience, but I've been frustrated by the process of doing it with a publisher, in that it's very slow, and doing a book in print, although there's nothing quite like having your name on a physical book, it's lovely. It's really quite a moment. They're kind of like dead on arrival, in the sense that it's a bit like when you drive your car off the forecourt brand new and you lose £2,000 straight away.
And I think in this kind of very fast moving, I feel sorry for anyone who's come up with a Microsoft 365 security and compliance book, who's now got to go and rename everything as purview.
I know. Exactly.
Exactly. So that idea of an online
So that's we're very, very early days, and we've got our next meeting to discuss where we're at, I think tomorrow as we record this, and we're sort of meeting fortnightly where we can. I mean, we've got a big group and some different time zones to take into account, yes, I'm just recounting I've definitely mentioned the whole team. I'm really scared I've left someone out.
We'll add in the show notes for wherever this goes
definitely. And we didn't mention Joanne, actually. Joanne's company is Nexo Novus or something like that, I think it is her organisation. But big
new
congratulations.
Partner.
Yes, you beat me to it.
Sorry.
But, no, that's fine. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's congratulations, Joanne. Very, very well deserved becoming a Microsoft partner. She does an awesome job. And I'm really excited about the expertise we've got on this book, and very, very humbled to be part of it.
No, it sounds fantastic. I think we'll start wrapping up there because we need to go and get some lunch before it all disappears. But
absolutely, it's been great to catch up in person. Yeah, fantastic, and let's hope it's not the last time.
And definitely not. And we hope you've enjoyed this as well. And I hope the background noise hasn't ruined this, and we can publish this as well.
We shall see. We shall see.
Yeah, we'll see from there. But otherwise, thank you very much.
Take care. Bye bye.